Hi, this is Representative Al Baldessaro, and we're back again on our show on Who's Looking Out for You with my great co-host, Representative Jeanine Nada. It's always a pleasure from Merrimack. The voice is going there. That last show with Eric got me, the voice
Eric
there.
Golub, we had the comedian,
Right.
the author of these books.
Yeah, so
he was here on our last show.
we won't even talk about running because you're already up over 2,000 miles.
Well,
so
no, I will be at the end of the
You'll be
year.
at
I'll
the
be at
end of the year.
2,000. So,
So
I'm only at 1,995 as of today.
Oh,
But by the time
okay.
everyone sees this, it'll be past that.
So I guess we could just go right to our guest that we brought in.
Right.
It was tough getting him in here because he's always busy.
Well, he had that long commute, too, all the way from
that's
across
right.
the
Yeah.
street.
It's
Well,
always
good thing I
the
left
town
early.
manager, Kevin Smith.
Al,
It's
always a
an honor.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Hi, Kevin.
Janine,
I feel like
thank
I
you for
haven't
crossing the river.
Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome.
And
I
I
feel
know.
like I haven't seen you for a long
I
time.
know, it does feel like it's
You know,
been a
we
long
can't even
time.
say welcome to Londonderry anymore because he lives in Londonderry now.
That's right. Did you used to live in Litchfield?
I did.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
we
remember
lived in
that.
Litchfield for 14 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lived in Londonderry for my parents moved here in 1986 along with everybody else. It's when we had a huge population explosion, the first one here in Londonderry. And then so I lived here from 86 until 2004 when my wife and I got married, or 2003. And then we moved to Litchfield, and then we moved back to Londonderry a couple of years ago.
Well, you've been on my other shows many times.
Yeah.
When you were head of
That's
Cornerstone.
Chatting with Jeanine.
Yeah.
Chatting with Jeanine.
Chatting
I've
with
been on the
Jeanine.
air since
Yeah.
2006.
Yeah.
And when you were running for governor, I remember you saying on the show that one of your kids thought you were actually running.
Was actually running.
Running.
Right. They didn't quite get it,
Yeah.
you know.
That
So.
was, and then I remember, I don't know what I guess it was still the governor's race when we were talking about different businesses, and you were telling me about this company called Breakwind Farm.
Breakwind Farm.
They made beans.
They
and
did,
Then
yeah.
I was at the farmer's market
What a
in
memory
Concord,
on
and
this
I came
lady.
I
across
know,
it.
right?
Oh, you're real. You actually exist.
Yeah.
Kevin Smith told me about
Wasn't
you.
making that up, no.
Do you remember the parrot bill?
Which bill?
The
The
parrot
parrot
bill.
bill?
You were in the gallery when I was arguing on the House floor. The parrot bill.
I think I remember
Because
this.
you told me that somebody had
Someone
their phone.
had an app and they were doing the parrot sounds.
And then you had Gary Hopper to get up. Remember he said the paratroopers?
Parrot troopers.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
the
that's
parrot
right.
troopers.
Yeah.
That was why I posted that on the thing, paratroopers. I said only on the site. I said only a few would even know what that is.
I know.
Always
Now it's
important
been
work
so
you guys
long.
are doing
Yes.
in Concord.
That's
We
right.
appreciate it
Parrot
very
bill,
much.
that's-
Well, you know, let's
Parrot
talk
was
about
great.
Londonderry for a minute there, you know,
All right.
on important work. I want to know, what have you been doing for the taxpayers? Are you saving us money or what are
We
you
are.
doing?
So when I started this job, became town manager in 2013, so 5 years ago.
It's been 5 years?
It has,
Wow.
yeah. Yep, it's been 5 years. The tax rate at that time in town was $5.19 per thousand. Today it's at $4.91 per thousand. And we haven't had a revaluation either. So that's all new tax revenue from new businesses that have come in that have lowered that rate. And you know, I tell people all the time, it's pretty the key to lowering taxes at the local level is it's a pretty simple formula. You just can't spend more than outside revenue that comes in or how much you're growing the tax base.
Right.
If your spending outpaces either one of those, well, your taxes are going to go up. But if it's not outpacing those two factors, then your taxes are going to go down. And what we've tried to do is keep the rate pretty stable and pretty level. Nobody likes large fluctuations in the tax base either. You don't want it to go up 30 cents one year and down 40 the next and have that, you know, kind of yo-yo effect. So we try to keep it pretty stable, and we do that by, you know, having default budgets every year.
Right.
We're not increasing the budget beyond what the contractual obligations are. And we continue to grow the tax base as far as bringing new industry and business into town. You know, when I came in, Pettingill Road was still
Right. It's still not on my
a
car
barren-
GPS.
Right, that's right. It was
you
a
know,
dream.
It was a dream.
Yeah, it was a dream.
And a lot of us working together pursued very hard to bring businesses into that area that were going to help with building the infrastructure. Because prior to that, the thought was, well, either the state should pay for the entire road or the town should pay for the entire road.
I spoke at a town meeting against it,
You
saying
did.
the businesses should pay, not the taxpayers.
And they did.
Right.
And the businesses did pay. And one of the really innovative things that the town council has done over the past few years is it's set up TIF districts, but not in the conventional way.
What's TIF?
They would. So a TIF stands for tax increment financing. And oftentimes municipalities will designate an area a TIF district to build up infrastructure, but the town will go into the red and will have to pay that back over time with future tax revenue. We did it a little bit differently here in Londonderry because some of these businesses said, well, we want some help with contributions to infrastructure in the way of sewer, roadway infrastructure, traffic lights, that sort of thing. So what we said is, okay, we'll designate the area a TIF district, and how we'll do it is you pay for it up front, and we'll reimburse you part of the cost, but we won't reimburse you until we're getting the tax revenue. So you have to be open for business, you know, you have to have your certificate of occupancy, and we have to have actual tax dollars in hand to give back to you before you get a dollar back. And by doing it that way, the town never goes into the red.
Right.
And the payback is typically 2 years or less. So for instance, we did a TIF district with two new companies that moved in not that long ago, FW Webb, which built a huge 1 million square foot facility over on Pettingill Road, and EFI, Electronics for Imaging, which built about 120 square feet.
How much tax revenue are those bringing in each?
Well, so FW Webb is valued at $52 million. So the tax revenue from that's about $1.2 million. EFI, I think, will be valued around $25 million. So it's a significant amount of money. And FW Webb is completely paid back now from the plan that we had in place with them to reimburse them for certain costs, which means now all of those tax dollars or revenue that we're getting from them starting this December will be coming back to the taxpayers.
Right. Oh,
So I have a
okay.
question with all the growth in Londonderry.
Yep.
I remember when you were running for governor, part of your campaign was you wanted to be Patrick Duvall's worst nightmare. You know,
Yep.
to let them know that New Hampshire's open for business. So are you the nightmare to all the other surrounding
other
towns? 'Cause
surrounding
I really
communities.
wish you were in Merrimack.
Well, you know, I think it's a healthy competition because certainly there are towns like Merrimack, Hudson, Derry, Salem. We're all competing to get those jobs. And I think we all want to see one another flourish. You know, a rising tide raises all boats. And we want all the surrounding communities to be doing very well in terms of attracting jobs. But certainly, you know, we're out there, our team in Londonderry, trying to bring the businesses here. We have the geographical benefits of being right next to the airport, having the airport
93 and
in our town. We have all the developable land around there.
right.
Exit 5 off 93, exit 4 off 93. So we have a lot
really
of
built
good places where you can develop commercial or industrial developments in town.
It seems, with all the businesses, it seems bigger than Merrimack, but you have only 7 state reps, and we have 8.
We have 7, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the population, we're at 24, almost 5.
Well,
but I think that's gone up.
I was
quite a
going to
bit
say,
now.
so you may see those
We
numbers
may pass you.
adjusted come 2020
Right.
because we're now ahead of Merrimack in population. When the latest
A lot of the
census
building.
numbers came out,
But the House has a set number of seats, 400,
Right.
and it can't increase.
Right.
So,
One of your seats may come to us. You never know.
so they'll adjust. So it's based off of population. So they'll adjust it based on what the population numbers are in 2020. And if Londonderry is ahead of Merrimack, we'll at least have the same number of seats, or we
but
could end up
somebody's got to lose one.
end up having more, right?
Yeah, and then sometimes they try to have floater, because the last time we had redistricting, I was a loud voice in that process, and they wanted us to have 7 seats with a flotarial. They wanted to put us in congressional district number 2 rather than keeping us in number 1. And I had a lot to say about that.
Yeah.
We're still in a CD 1.
Yeah, you know, I mean, and I was never a fan when they combined Londonderry and Auburn together because the communities are so very different.
Right.
And have much different needs. You know, it's not like combining Londonderry and Merrimack per se, which are very similar
weren't we,
communities.
or I know before my time, Merrimack did have a floterial seat that was part of a town across the river, which didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I had Auburn when I ran. He was a state rep also, one
Oh,
term. right?
yeah, you were one
Right.
term. Yeah, I remember. You were like 18.
I
But
was,
you know,
yeah.
but
See, I remember
Auburn-
everything. Never tell
You
me
really have a
anything.
great memory.
Yeah,
Jeanine.
she does. She's unbelievable.
Except I get my kids' names wrong all the time.
You know, I was going to get into Auburn, but there's some other questions I wanted answered,
Yeah.
and hopefully, because I see the school, the numbers are dropping, but yet our school costs are going up. Now, I'm hoping that the Woodmont, that we don't project those revenues and then start spending. You know what I mean? What's going on with that?
No, right. So, you know, again, Al, it comes down to the taxpayers always have a say in this. You know, every year you're voting on the budget as a warrant article, and then you have all the other operating expenses on the school side and the town side. And I think sometimes there can be a temptation to say, well, we're going to have a lot new revenue from Pettingill Road, from Woodmont, that we can increase spending over in this area. And when you have needs, great, we should be addressing those needs. For instance, Central Fire Station was built in 1978. It was time for it to be renovated, and so we put that on as a warrant article this past March, and fortunately it passed.
When is that going to start, that project?
Hopefully in August. The issue has been state issues. It's been environmental services and Department of Transportation. I'm happy to get into those things too if you want to talk about that. But hopefully in August is when that's going to begin. But going back to what I was saying, but I think that's where, when that temptation comes up, that you need policymakers, you need officials working at the staff level to say, you know what, again, we got to try to keep the rate steady. And, you know, when you're having good times, it's also good to decrease the rate as well.
Right.
You know, so that when we're not in positions like when the economy is doing so well, and we're not having, I mean, because the other thing is that we're having big increases in outside revenue. So aside from property taxes, for instance, motor vehicle registrations, it's been through the roof the last few years. And every year we keep upping the projections of revenue for motor vehicle, and almost yearly the revenue coming in is almost $1 million above where our projections are, even though we're increasing projections by $500,000 every year to try to keep up with, you know, what's coming in.
Right.
But we always estimate conservatively as well, because the last thing you want to do is overestimate your revenues, come in under your estimate, then that's when you've got problems. So I'd rather have more revenue than what we estimated.
Without a doubt. We do the same thing with the state.
Sure.
Yeah.
Norm Mage is one of the best there. We had over $100 million. Then with the president's tax cuts, now the business taxes are coming in higher now.
Right.
So we're making more money. So they had a Christmas tree of $120 million. I voted against it. Because I wanted to take care of infrastructure, opioids and other, but there was other things that we had no business being involved in. No hearings were done, so I couldn't support it. You know, it was just thrown in there.
Yeah, we're one of those renegades in the house. And
well, and again, I think that's, and it's very similar on the local level too, that you know, it's, you don't want to give into that temptation when you know you're going to have extra revenues to say, oh, what can we spend this on now? No, let's put it aside. We have a very healthy undesignated fund balance, which we use to help offset the tax rate almost every year. So it essentially goes back to the taxpayers. In fact, last year we put that money, almost over $1 million, or $1.1 million, against the tax rate in savings that we had in the undesignated fund balance.
I had a question for you. I had the chief of police of Merrimack on my show to talk about the opioid crisis, because it's bad in Merrimack, and it's right near where I live. And also we have prostitution going on. Do you have those issues here as well?
Certainly the opioid issues we have, and it's, I think all communities, whether you're in the southern tier of the state, even the northern tier of the state, are dealing with the opioid crisis.
Oh, the president was here. When did we see? It was cold. It was still winter. Were you there? We met at a college.
At the college.
I was not there for that. And I don't know if anyone from Londonderry was there.
Al was there.
I was there. I mean,
Okay.
I'm always.
Al was in the second row. They let me sit in the front.
Yeah.
Well, Al, you're going to have to look into that.
Yeah. Well, I got there a little later. That's all. You know.
But the president saw you. He's
Yeah.
like, there's my friend Al. Always.
I was in the back. You know what I mean, and then came out and with some other people there. But
Yeah.
no big deal. But anyways, we get back on this thing here. You just seen what happened with Dunbarton, the state rep that took the school, the court.
Oh, JR.
JR.
JR Hull.
No,
He took
I'm
the
not
school
familiar
board
with
to
that.
court because they had $1.1 million over, and they wanted to have a special session there to spend that money. He took them to court, and the judge ruled against the school. Said no, the money goes back to the taxpayers.
Yeah.
So where are we at with the school? With there, are they the overage? Are they?
Well, I got to be honest. So I really don't pay a lot of attention to
Yeah,
the
I thought
school
you'd be
side
separate
because
town.
we are separate governments.
Right, but that money has to come back to the general fund if they don't, right?
The school is allowed to hold a certain portion
Right.
of any surplus that they have at the end of the year. So a few years ago, previously they could not hold a surplus.
Right,
It had to go back to the
Commission,
taxpayers and be worked into the next budget. A few years ago, they changed the law and they said the school district is allowed to hold up to a certain, there's a formula for it.
Right.
So it's a certain amount of money that they can hold in surplus. It's not as much as what the town is allowed to hold, but they can hold a certain amount of money. Anything over that would have to go back.
Right. I mean, that's my concern is the money coming back to the taxpayers
Yep.
to offset, because that's some of the biggest issues I hear.
Well, and that's all,
know?
and that's all public information
Right.
now. So if you were to
Yeah.
contact either the finance director, Peter Curro there, or the superintendent and ask them,
Right.
what's your surplus, how much are you holding, how much are you allowed to hold, I'm sure they can provide all of that information
Right.
to you.
Yeah, I'd be just interested to find out because I mean, I think we're doing a pretty good job, but I still,
Yep.
we get the calls.
Yep.
And they blame the state. They
Yep.
blame the state, but we haven't raised the statewide, SWEP
Yep.
on the education property tax in 9 years.
Yeah, so, and you bring up a great point out. So we just started this program called Leadership Londonderry. Well, I
was
should
one
say
of the
we
first.
restarted it.
I was in that.
Okay,
Yeah.
years ago probably,
Years ago,
right?
yeah.
So years ago, Pauline Winslow and Mark Oswald, who was a town councilor at the time, started a program called Leadership Londonderry, which was to educate the citizens of Londonderry, anyone who wanted to partake could partake in it, on all the various aspects of town government and school government as well. It stopped in about 2011, around that time frame. The town councils recently resurrected it. And so now we're starting the program again because it's these kind of issues we want to educate as many people as possible on, so that they understand how these things work, what the relationship between the town and the state is like, where the revenues come from on the state side,
That
how
sounds very
how
interesting.
so many people don't know how the tax rate is
Right.
put together, what comprises
or
of
how
the
to
tax
read.
rate.
I've heard
default,
from a lot of
yeah.
people well, we have our spring elections at a different time than the rest of the state.
Yeah.
And I know people that don't go and vote because they don't understand what
They
they're
don't understand
reading.
it,
I said,
right.
if it says shall the town raise and appropriate, that means shall the town raise taxes. So just vote no on
Yeah.
all those things.
Right. Well, and so very interesting. So our budget, our operating budget this past March was below our operating budget from the year prior. So we had a budget that actually, an operating budget that went down from the year prior on the town side. Now, when you read the money that has to be raised and appropriated, right, it was something like $4.82, right? And I got phone calls from people that said, so if I vote for this, my taxes are going up $4.82. And I had to explain to them that no, they're not going up by that much. That's the total amount
Total for the whole town.
for the whole town of what the operating budget is. Every year you build it from zero. But if people aren't aware of this, or they're not quite sure how to understand it, they may say, I'm not going to vote for this, my taxes are going to go up $4. So it's those kind of things that
Right.
we want, again, to just try to educate as many people as possible to really understand how their town government works and operates.
That's called Leadership Londonderry?
Leadership Londonderry,
Do you
yep.
have it online? I mean,
We
that
do.
sounds like
We-
other towns might want to copy
Well, we
that.
do have it online. The curriculum isn't online, but the application is online. The application period recently closed. We were hoping for at least 12 people. We got 20.
Oh,
Wow,
good. That's
awesome.
excellent.
Yeah. And actually there were some people we had to turn away because 20 was the cap that we had planned for it.
I'm a graduate of that years ago myself.
Yeah.
I think it was Kathy Wagner dubbed out for, Londonderry Times.
Yep.
and That we
Okay,
all went
yep.
through. We
I
had a
think
great time with it, going around town and
Yeah.
state government. Then I became a nightmare for them.
And that's part of the purpose too, is so those people were hoping maybe they'll become volunteers in
Right.
some capacity.
Or run for council.
A run for
Yeah.
council,
Well, it's
be
just
on a
nice to
board.
understand more because it's very hard. You know, if you're not in government, if you don't follow, it's hard to comprehend.
Well, and you want to know too, okay, what is the state school portion of the tax rate and how is that formula
Do you
calculated?
put that on your bill? We had it on our bill one
do.
time so people could see
Yep.
just how much is going to the school.
We
and
do. We
it's
do.
Mostly
We put the
salaries.
town, we put the school, we put the county, and we put the state portion in as well. Yeah.
Well, hopefully we fixed one of your headaches here that I know Sherry was getting from the elderly paying late fees. You
What was this?
The elderly at the mobile manufactured home, and where they
Right.
if they didn't pay their rent on the first, they would get a $25 late
Yep.
fee. Well, I passed a bill to fix that,
Yeah.
and it was signed by the governor that now anyone on Social Security or you can't charge them a late fee until after the 7th.
Right.
Because some didn't get their checks to the 3rd or the
Yep.
7th. And
Yep.
I mean, it's a shame I had to put a law in
Yeah.
to do this here in Londonderry. Then when we were doing the bill, come to find out some other areas throughout the state were doing the
Do
same
the same thing. Yeah.
So it was pretty much an elderly protection bill.
Yep.
You know.
Well, and Al, and then that's, hey, look, there's a reason why you get reelected.
Well,
you know,
It's that face.
Well, I was going to say something else, Jeanine, but
Yeah.
you can maybe go with the face.
My wife says I'm good looking. But a lot of people don't know. The generator, I brought the people in for that, right? The engineers for the light up on, right?
Right.
Brought
Well,
it,
I mean,
you know.
you're very responsive when, and I think that's, to me, I think more than anything, people want their government just to be responsive
Oh, yeah, to
to
take
them.
care of them and answer them.
And sometimes you can't fix what it is they want you to fix. Sometimes you just can't do it because of whatever reasons.
Right.
But at least if you're listening to them, if you're responsive to them, if you show them you tried as much as you could. I'll give you a perfect example. So Friday night, I get a phone call to my work voicemail. I was checking my emails and it came in over my email. It was 9:15 on Friday night. And there was a resident who had called in, not very happy because we're reconstructing one of the roads, Pillsbury Road, and water, we had this huge storm that
Right.
came through here
Yeah.
Friday night. I mean, they had to dump 3 inches of rain in a matter of 45 minutes.
Wow.
Water, because of the road reconstruction, had been veering off into her driveway and was going into her basement.
Oh.
And so she was, needless to say, not very happy about the
Right.
fact that this was happening. Had called the fire department. They offered to come out and help get the water out of the basement. But in the meantime, I got the message. I called the head of Public Works. I said, can we send the crew out, put some sand, down in front of the driveway and divert the water so it doesn't keep going into her, until we get the curbing
Right,
out
yeah.
because the road's under construction. 10 o'clock at night, Public Works was out there. And needless to say, this resident was extremely grateful
Awesome.
and happy that we took what was a very negative situation, but got on it right away, responded right away. And again, I think that's what people just want, is to know that their government is
Right.
actually
Yeah.
helping them.
Did she have things in the basement that got ruined?
She was pretty funny about it. I think there probably was, but she did tell me, she
Right.
said, Kevin, I had a lot of crap down there. I've been looking to clean out. So
Yeah.
it gave her
I
a
know.
reason to
I have all my photo
go
albums
through it.
downstairs,
Yeah.
and I always worry if that
I know, but
happened.
I had
then-
a copy of mine is all finished and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
2 years ago, like you said, the same thing. I got a complaint about the lines in front of the high school, and it was a state issue.
Okay,
So,
yep.
and then I called up. They're not scheduled. I said, no, bull. It's a safety hazard.
Yeah.
See, they don't want me calling because I use some choice words.
Yeah.
Like that light in North Londonderry.
Yep.
They try
Yep.
to tell me, oh no, we're working with this. I said, that's all.
Warning.
I said, you got kids walking across the street and parents taking the kids to school. And okay, we'll get with the town manager. They said, all right,
Yeah.
all right. And they were working the trail committee there.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you worked and they went and seen you, and I,
Yeah.
got out of it there. So it worked out great.
Well, and so going back to this fire station issue, right? So what was holding this up for the longest time is that we have a man-made area of water. It's just over 10,000 square feet. and it was a what do you call it for the fire to use for water?
Right.
Yeah. There's a
Reservoir.
term
it's a
for it,
pit.
and I can't think of
There's a
it.
water pit there that they use.
So,
Right.
but it was man-made back in the 1970s.
Is it a reservoir?
It's not even a reservoir.
And they call it
it's just,
wetlands?
well,
A swamp?
so because we, it's not even a hydrant now. There's another. What's it? Al, you know the term
Hydrant.
for it.
It was originally made with a dry hydrant that was.
Oh, it was made with a dry
Is,
hydrant,
is
right?
his voice on the tape?
Yeah, but what do you call those ponds? Fire ponds.
Yeah.
So,
we know what you're talking about.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Water.
So Al knows
Yeah.
it was man-made, right? But we didn't have the plans. Okay, so DES said, well, we're considering it a wetland, and you're going to have to put together a whole wetlands mitigation package, right?
Crazy.
Completely crazy.
Right.
So finally, I said, well, let's try to work with DES and try to get them to come to
Department
some
of Environmental
reasonable,
Services.
Right.
you know, response here and look at this as a fire pond because fire ponds are exempt from wetlands
Right.
mitigation. Well, that didn't happen. So I ended up calling the governor and I said, I need your help with this. I said, because this is going to delay this project for God knows how long. And I explained to him the situation. He said, Kevin, I'll be right on it, not a problem. And he did. He was right on it. He called the commissioner that day. Commissioner called me and said, Kevin, we'll take care of it. You know, it's obviously a fire pond.
Right.
There are people that would swear to affidavits that it was built as a fire pond. And so now we just recently got our wetlands permit.
Oh, good. Okay.
Because we're going to have to dredge and fill most of it as part of the.
Well, you do know we're from the government. We're here to help.
I
Yeah,
do know
yeah,
that.
we're-
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if
Yeah.
you got an issue,
I
you
know, Al. I took this
you
one
know.
into my own
Okay,
hands. I
that's
know I
good.
could have called
Yeah,
you, but
Well, you kind of part of
Yeah.
government too, right? In town government.
we are. And you know what? We work with the state all the time on many issues. DOT probably the most because we have a lot of roadway here in Londonderry. I mean, we're 41 square miles. So we're a large community, a lot of state roadway. And that's, you know, and that's like another thing. So Mammoth Road out here is a state road. Route 102 is a state road. Peabody Row is a state road, believe it or not. And so, you know, when people see plows on the road, they may see a town plow in the middle of a snowstorm with its plow up on Mammoth Road and go, well, why isn't it plowing? Why is the plow up? Well, because we're not allowed to plow
yeah,
state
it's a state
roads.
road.
And vice versa, the state isn't allowed to plow town roads.
Well, you know, you're fortunate. Londonderry people don't realize because we have some of the most powerful legislators that live right here in Londonderry.
Al Baldessaro.
Sharon Carson. She's the second in the Senate.
Yep.
Most powerful senator there. Sherm Packard, the
Yep.
deputy speaker.
Right.
I'm the assistant majority leader, but also vice chair.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So we throw a lot of weight with the years that we have up there. Betsy McKinney,
Yep.
finance, the guru in the numbers game.
And you were a
You know,
chair before,
and I
because
was a
what my
chair, yeah.
freshman term, he was my chairman.
So
2
we
terms.
pass and have the, you know, a lot of stuff on, make sure we're
Right.
protected. And I know we only got about 2 minutes. I wanted to talk about them poll tax, that we bit our tongue on it, you know, because we have to somehow figure this out throughout the whole state.
Right.
Because that cost is downshifting to the consumers.
Yeah, I mean, our big concern in town is with the utilities and how the utilities are being valued, and that the legislature not do a wholesale change of it.
Right.
It's one thing to do telephone poles, it's another thing to include all of the utility plans.
Right.
Londonderry is a very utility-rich town. We have the natural gas.
Yep, I toured it.
You know,
I'm on the energy committee.
But our
okay.
costs are higher, they said, compared to other cities and towns.
Well,
See, that's where the issue is, why we get.
But you got to think too, Londonderry is a high value property town
yeah.
as well. And so a plant that's located in Londonderry's property value may not be as high if it were located way up, you know, in the northern part of the state somewhere. But we have a lot of utilities in town here that provide a lot of tax revenue
Right.
to town. And guess what? There are towns who don't want any utilities in town because they think it's ugly, it puts
Yeah.
a
Right.
mark on the
we went through
landscape,
that.
okay? The trade-off is if you have the utilities, you're going to derive
You're gonna
tax
get tax
revenue from it.
revenue,
And we
right.
get a lot of tax revenue
Right.
from the utilities we have. And all we're saying to the legislature is we think it's defensible, the values we've put on the utilities. It went to court. The Supreme Court ruled in our favor and said that it was okay with the way that we were assessing the utilities. And we just don't want that wholesale change because what that would do is create a huge huge property tax
Oh,
spike
without a doubt.
for the residents
You've
in town.
testified
Yeah.
in my committee before.
I
I,
have,
remember
yeah.
seeing you
Because
there.
some of us just look at that as another way it's taking tax money out of another pocket from the people, the users.
But here was my argument against that, Alan. I know we
And
got
we got
30
about-
seconds,
yeah.
but here's my argument against that. I said, if you can prove to me, to the utilities, if you
Mm-hmm.
can prove to me that if we lowered your assessment, that the ratepayers would see an
Right.
equal drop in their
See, I asked
electric
the same
bills.
question. That's why
and
I
guess
went
what?
along.
They will not commit to it.
I asked the
They
same
won't
question,
commit to
yeah,
it.
and that's why I stayed away from it.
They went,
You know
oh,
what I
well,
mean?
no,
Yeah.
we probably can't do that. Well, then I'm sorry, but
Kevin, it's a pleasure having you
It
on.
is.
Geez, we should have
Yes.
done an hour show.
I know we could have done
Yeah.
an
We
hour.
could have
We'll
done
do it
an
again
hour 'cause
sometime.
It goes
Yeah.
fast. This is Who's Looking Out for You. Thank you. We'll see you next time.